hosepipe of shite, Dickensian shit twiglet, bucket of bastard, rectum-mouthed shite trumpet. If you think that swear words are not refined, subtle, or ambiguous enough to be in a poem, fuck you. It is the job of poetry to sing with the attitude and the urgency of the moment in which it lives. It is now February 2021 and knuckle-dragging spaff-wombles have broken into the chambers of state and are standing on desks and screaming like horny narcissists. How can poets not swear? And yet poetry is ceaselessly trying to gentrify itself under the delusion that it is an art of refinement. This is something I care very passionately about because many other poets who I grew out of the scene with are complicit in this, I believe. In this podcast, I will sketch an anatomy of swearing and why we should be using it artfully. This is part of a series where I explore the relationship between performance, linguistics, and the psyche. I'd like to make a big shout out to all my Patreons for making this possible. So the best swear words, fuck, cunt, shit, bollocks, are all of Germanic origin. That's to say they predate the refined Latinate pen of Imperial Rome. One of the reasons they have survived, I believe, in the badlands of the English lexicon for so many centuries is because of the way that they sound. Fuck, cunt, shit, bollocks. These words are bookended by hard consonants. They're blunt words. They're almost like bullets. Now, I'd like to quote from the poem Down There, which was written and performed by my friend Lizzie Mack, a performance poet in Oxford, England. I like the word cunt. I can scream it with passion, but vagina's off-putting in a medical fashion. I like the word cunt. It's pre-Roman and earthy. It came before class, but still some are not worthy. All sounds, thank you Lizzie Mack for permission to use that poem, all sounds, all words are sacred, including those demonic trickster words that jump out of the shadowlands of the human psyche. In the philosophy of mantra yoga, all sounds are considered to be energetic transmissions, not just of sound, but of vibration. And because the universe is threaded together with vibratory transmissions of energy, the way our poems sound impacts the way they work on our body, our mind, and even, if you like, our spirit. Now, nowhere are these energetic transmissions so apparent as in the arena of live performance. The spoken word scene that I grew out of was riddled, certainly in the early noughties, and I think it still is to a certain degree, riddled with swear words, right? And I believe this is no coincidence. Scholar of orality, Walter Ong, argues that oral or spoken verbal artistry is inherently agonistic. That's to say that it is a conversation, it's a contestation, it's collisional, and this gives it a flavour of banter, risk-taking, and even mouth-to-mouth combat. And if you're interested in those themes, there is a chapter on slam and the history of adversarial poetic combat in my book, Stage Invasion, if you want to go further into that. It's also much easier to take risks with language when you're on the stage than it is when you're on the page, right? Publishers can't know their readership. They don't know who's going to be picking the book up, right? But for performers, you can read the vibe in the room, and you can know to what extent you can take risks with the people who are in front of you, and that's kind of part of the craft of live literature, right? This is something I'm going to pick up on in another podcast, actually, about comedy in poetry. So look out for that one. So the spoken word swirls in the electrochemical flux of us here and now, and strong language lives more comfortably in such an environment. It's often also more important, I believe, to be visceral, lively, and impactful in your language on stage than it is to be concise, subtle, and oblique. So this idea in creative writing courses that you should write quietly doesn't map over to stagecraft. Stand-up comedians know this almost intuitively, right? If you want to check out poets who kind of cross over between the world of stand-up and poetry, two that I would recommend is Thick Richard and Byron Vincent, particularly as it relates to swearing. Now, none of this sweary bad mouthery is without craft, okay? In fact, it is highly craft, I would say. It's highly poetic. Here is a quote from the team of the trivia game show QI. Compound swears, like shit gibbon, work best when the second word is a two-syllable word where the first syllable is stressed and contains the same number of vowels as the swear. This is why cock-womble works, but dick-womble does not. Don't worry about getting your head around all this. I will paste this into the text in the blurb below. Here are some examples of how this formula can work. And this came out of a workshop that I did on satire. Arse-fraggle, guff-monkey, knob-mooming, twat-clanger, muntling bluster-fuckler, arse-biscuit, shit-bubble, spurious spunk-puddle, wank-stained felt monkey. There's a few in there that deviate from that rule, but I've kept them in because I think they're fun. So a few years back, I interviewed the spoken word poet Jerry Potter, who's based in Manchester, about his poem The Meaning of Fuck All, which is about Tory austerity and cuts. And he told me, and I quote, "Sometimes you go to a poetry gig and people are waffling on in very beautiful language about something that is very hard. I think language needs to be harder. You have to get at the actual language of the event, the blast of the event." So swear words are part of our lexicon. If we banish them from poetry, we end up with a sanitized, gentrified poetic of pretension and piety. And I'm sad to say, I think that is happening on stages where poetry is being performed right now in the UK. In fact, actually, it's February 2021. There's no poetry being performed on stages at all at the moment. But this is a trend I've observed in my research. So to conclude, there is much linguistic innovation in foul language. Insults and swear words are avant-garde by definition. They exist in the frontier territories of language, beyond the borders of sensible and acceptable. Bear in mind, by the way, if you call yourself avant-garde, you must also remember that you are also a massive wanker. You can see my podcast on meditation is a performing art for more on the importance of being a wank biscuit. So swear words, I should also say, are audacious social as well as linguistic transactions. And for this reason, they are inherently part of the craft of live performance. When done well, and they can be done in a way that isn't artful, I think that's important to say. When done well, they can be creative, they can be surprising, they can be risky, they can be symbolic, they can be ambiguous, and they can be musical. Swearing is highly, highly poetic. Thank you to my Patreons again for making this possible. If you're not a Patreon already, you can follow the link below to find out what other free shit you can get from me and make possible my work as a researcher, an author and a poet in these weird fucking times where our incomplete raison d'etre has evaporated. Please also subscribe to the channel that you're watching this on. Check out my website if you want to get more of my stuff, videos, etc. And if you want to go further into this, then check out my book, Stage Invasion, which looks at all of these subjects in more detail. Thanks for listening.